Ambassador Garcia, the fifth Spanish EU presidency was marked with the early parliamentary elections held in the country in July, and the forming of a new government led by Prime Minister Sanchez, who was re-elected. How satisfied are you with the realization of the agenda of Spanish presidency of the EU Council that ends this month?
Well, good morning, first of all, pleasure being here. Actually, we are about to conclude our EU presidency, the rotating presidency, and I wouldn't go into making a comment where we are or not satisfied, or myself. I mean, I can just speak about some figures which may give the idea of how much we have accomplished. I would just mention a few figures, as I said. We have already had 24 informal ministerial meetings, 24 formal ministerial meetings. I mean, General Affairs Councils, Foreign Affairs Councils, Energy Councils, all sorts, 24. We have had so far 6 summits. We have had an informal European Council. We have had a formal, a normal, regular one, European Council. And we are expecting to have additional things. I mean, just in a few days, we are having EU Western Balkan Summit, and then we are having, in the March, I mean, next day actually would be European Council. So that's only for figures. I can say we have already taken great steps forward in several issues, fields. I wouldn't say satisfied. It would be up to other people to consider to what extent we have achieved our goals. But there is a feeling, and that was the purpose from the very first day, elections or not, just to carry forward this presidency. Spain, I think, I don't know if you already mentioned, but it's the 5th occasion that yes, we are being on the chair. We are presiding over European Union Council, and for us, it's sort of I wouldn't say everyday exercise, but it's part of being European. So we try to prepare. We have been in preparation for months, and in the end, we come to it. So someone will come and we say whether we have achieved, accomplished. But as for what was our agenda, our program that is being carried out, as I said, has nothing to do. We are a European, a pro-European country. We have pro-European citizens, and we are committed to it. So, well, we work and we continue to work. That's the whole issue.
Although the EU enlargement process was not among the top priorities of the Spanish presidency, Madrid's support for the EU perspective of North Macedonia and the Western Balkan region is firm and consistent. Also, Foreign Ministers Osmani and Alvarez signed a memorandum of understanding in Skopje in April this year for the development of the cooperation in the EU accession process. What can we expect in this segment of bilateral cooperation?
Well, if you allow me, I would like to sort of make a remark concerning your first statement in your question. I know that it's not part of our 4 priorities, but, I mean, and this is a big but, because as I said when I was addressing the 2 commissions in Parliament, for us, Western Balkans, the whole region, is the most important one. And just, I would once again go to facts and figures. First of all, we have a seminar just a few days before the beginning of our presidency in June in Alcalá de Henares, close to Madrid. Just a seminar having all actors from the region in participating into this seminar. I mean, it's not a common thing, but we did so. Second thing, for example, we have among these 24 informal, we have one at the end of September that was held in Murcia, which was which actually addressed the issues related to enlargement. I mean, we have repercussions of enlargement in EU policies. We also considered on that occasion, we made an analysis of what were the needs, what were the necessary steps to be taken in order to accommodate for enlargement. I mean, I speak about internal reforms of the EU, And also, for sure, we touch upon one of those issues that have been in the focus for the last few months, which is gradual integration. That was part of it. And then we began preparations of the Granada Declaration. And you know, well, we are all aware that in Granada Declaration, one of the main topics actually is the last but one para in that declaration, where there is very clear message concerning enlargement. So if someone would say, well, enlargement is not part of, or Western Balkans is not part of, I would contradict it with this. So sorry for this long starting or opening remark, but I would like to make it clear. I know back in my capital they feel, and I also share that feeling, that we have been working and we continue to work these days precisely to push forward into on the issue of enlargement. Then we come to the bilateral. This memorandum of understanding, which is of a political nature, and by this it doesn't mean that is of lesser importance, but the only thing is that it's not a legally constraining document, but a memorandum of understanding, well established already. It has quite a wide range of possibilities. I mean, it goes from jointly promotion of stability and prosperity and so on, that sort of language, but there is also very concrete things. For example, and we are about to begin implementation once we have concluded our presidency with some specific ideas. But for example, just to mention, it's very, very important, for example, national coordination whenever you are in the process of becoming a full member of the European Union. That's one of the issues where we are ready to share our experience. I mean, we have a long experience. We have also quite a long process of negotiations. It was also complicated to get into all the intricacies, what it means to be an EU full member. For example, that's one thing. Taking full advantage of EU financial instruments. On that, we also can share our experience. We are not to teach lessons, I mean, that far from that, but we can share our experience. How important is that you manage to absorb the maximum quantity, how to learn to use it. Also to work on a key, how to make harmonization with legal key, which is almost everything you can imagine. And not only that, I mean, we have been working so far with North Macedonia concerning twinning and TAIEX, which are two instruments within a whole range of instruments that can be used in order to get a country ready to work with all the advantages of being a full EU member. So there are a wide range of possibilities. We are going to develop them. We are going to implement them. I mean, it's just a question of time. But we have been part of as many as, I think it was 10 or around 10 twinnings with North Macedonia, and we are ready to go forward. We have the experience and the know-how, and we would like to share it. Not teaching lessons, but being helpful. That's the whole
point. North Macedonia received the new EC report on the country's progress, which noted serious remarks regarding the situation in the judiciary and the fight against corruption. What do you think is the key approach to move reforms in this critical area?
Actually, this is the most important chapter when becoming a full member of the European Union, and it's for all of us. I mean, all members that we are actually full members of the EU, and also for candidates. And in this respect, indeed, the report or progress report of the EC Commission, there is a call of attention to this, to judiciary, what is the current situation, what are the reforms needed, what are the flaws here and there. And actually, it's not only there. I mean, there is also a report that is to come. I suppose you may recall there was this peer review. I think it was by the end of July that they actually pay a first visit, and then later on in September. So,
Judiciary Council, you mean?
yeah, there was a peer review on the Judiciary Council, but it was not only on the Judiciary. It was, my feeling, it was a bit more ample than that. I mean, and there would be also recommendations coming from there. There are recommendations coming from this, from the progress report, and there are also. Let me recall something I just forgot to mention when we were speaking about the importance we pay in our presidency to Western Balkans and furthermore to North Macedonia, if you allow me. We actually held here the Ministerial Forum on the 26th and 27th of October, a Ministerial Forum on Interior and Justice Affairs. And there, actually, also there was attention was paid to the issue of justice, not only in North Macedonia, but for the whole region. And there is a report that has been prepared by OSCE for the whole region, precisely that was presented on this occasion, and there was a lot of attention. And then you say, what would be the approach? I mean, this is a highly political but highly technical. You have to be, and as I think we are all, in the best possible hands. We have legal counselors of utmost the best quality. For example, this peer review was led by a former president of the court. I think it was Croatian.
Yes.
So, I mean, and there are recommendations, and this is, I mean, is the gist of democracy, at the same time, gist of rule of law, but it's very, very complex. So, you have recommendations, have to follow recommendations. I mean, that would be the key approach. Have to be, I mean, to go through it. It takes time, it takes effort, but that would be my approach to it.
Okay. The country completed the screening process successfully, but political consensus is not yet in sight on the constitutional amendments, which are a condition for continuing the European path. At the upcoming EU summit, scheduled for December 14, decisions are expected on the enlargement process. What will it mean for North Macedonia if the country does not seize the opportunity created by the new geopolitical momentum after the war in Ukraine and the security challenges?
Well, on this, what if not?
What if not, yes.
In the last few years, it has become quite a common feature of historians. It's a new way to approach history. And there are plenty of books about what if not. It's difficult to say, but let's come back to facts and figures, actually. Back in July 2022, a door was open. It was the first intergovernmental conference that took place. And that's most important because actually it was opening of negotiations. Now it comes another step. Another step, and on this I want to be very, very clear, I mean, is the decision to amend the constitution. And that decision is solely and is a sovereign decision to be taken by North Macedonia, yes, by your country. No one can decide on your behalf, it's up to you. What we can say is how important all opportunities are open. What would happen if not? I mean, this coming, as you mentioned, we don't have. I have been here already for over 2 years, and at the moment there is not a necessary majority in Parliament for it. Well, I mean, as I said, it's a sovereign decision. Anyhow, what is clear is the condition that there is a need to adopt these amendments of the Constitution. If it doesn't happen, well, there is still momentum, but there is this condition. And we shouldn't just try to forget, or there could be something else. Actually, things are as they are. What would happen in future? Don't know. I mean, in how many months, how many years, the window, opportunity window, who knows? But really, I mean, on that, let's be clear. There is this, the European Council, well, I mean, the condition has not been met, so there could be decisions on different issues. Actually, on this I have to be very, very sort of discreet and also prudent, since actually this is now being negotiated precisely, and we are presidency, so we have to be especially prudent. we have to be especially prudent on this issue, especially cautious, and at the same time, since this European Council is to take decisions on several issues, but
not for Macedonia, I think, for North Macedonia.
Well, I wouldn't go any further on this. I mean, as I said, I have to be cautious on the issue, but I mean, the condition was clear, and that would be it. So when it comes, and the message is clear. There is this condition to be taken.
The EU Western Balkan Summit will be held the day before the EU Summit, yes, in conditions where the Union is much more focused on Ukraine's membership bid. Are there grounds for concern that political assessments will dominate over the merit principles in the evaluation of the European integration process?
Actually, a few months ago, even I would say, yeah, about a year ago, we began to speak about the momentum for enlargement. So in a way, this is quite a paradox, because we are now considering that Ukraine may have the focus, but at the same time, actually, the legal war against Ukraine, the legal attack by Russia against Ukraine, actually was the origin of this momentum, and we all recall that. So we have to be aware that there is a momentum and there is this opportunity that should be seized. But that's on the one hand. I think, and I try to recall the precise text, the precise wording of the Granada Declaration. Once again, there is a very specific reference to merit-based approach. So on that, I mean, there may be political setting, a political framework, but in the end, when we come to this process, it's a process that is led by merit-based approach. And on that, even if we have a specific momentum or whatever, we'll have to take into account this. I mean, for North Macedonia and for any other candidate around.
What is your take on the growth plan for the Western Balkans, and how realistic is the 2030 enlargement target date, which Brussels announced as a time frame for the EU to be prepared for new member states?
Growth plan, actually, we were talking about, well, how or to what extent EU presidency term has been productive or not on this issue. I would recall, as I said, in the informal ministerial General Affairs Council we had in Murcia, there was a mention to part of it. I mean, this gradual integration, which is part of the idea. I mean, it's not only that. But this growth plan represents or gives is a response to this request of making easier the convergence of different socioeconomic systems in the sense that it's not only getting prepared on a key or other issues. I think actually in the visit of von der Leyen just on the 30th of October, she referred to North Macedonia. It was the level of the rate of convergence, it was something like 40 or 42. So it's quite an important thing. Growth plan would be one of the issues that would be tackled both in the EU, as you mentioned, in the EU Western Balkan Summit, and also in the EU Council, just the day after. So it would be one of the main issues. And it's indeed a response to that. I mean, it's some additional funding, important, in order to come forward to this gradual integration with more funding, but also, let's recall, also subject to conditions, a condition which is reform. That's important.
Conditionally. Conditional manner.
it's always this has been always the case. I mean, it's reform and condition is part of the game of European Union, and is part. I mean, not only of becoming full member, it's part of being a member. Whenever there is funding for something, we have just witnessed with Next Generation or with other funding that has been provided for European member states. It's been always on the basis of you have to do this, you have to do that. I mean, it's not money for free, if I may put it that way.
Yes. An election year is ahead. Regular elections are expected in North Macedonia in May, as well as elections for the European Parliament in June. How much will the outcome of the elections and the rise of the Euroscepticism in some EU member states affect the reform processes in the country and the EU enlargement policy?
Well, actually, two sets of elections, both important, and I will begin by, you allow me, by elections in North Macedonia. And I will begin by saying that, well, it's not up to me to comment on it. I mean, whenever is the result, that's it. That's on the one hand. As for the elections for the European Parliament, indeed, well, you speak about Euroscepticism, and this is an issue. I wouldn't be able to quote figures or statistics or rates, but it comes and goes. No, now when someone will say we are in a position that there may be more Euroscepticism. Results, whatever they may come, we will have to work with them. And actually, is the response and is the vote of the citizens. By the way, as a European, well, I don't know if I will have the opportunity to vote or not on this occasion, but would respond to what is the public opinion, and then we will have to accommodate to it. But anyhow, let me recall on something. I mean, Parliament, and then there is a time, and there is a need for some time to set up the new Commission. At the same time, the European Union has a long, is an institution, an animal, if you allow me, a political animal, or if you allow me to put it that way, that works in the long term. And actually, there may have been new ideas, changes, amendments, but there is this idea of Europe, of a wide Europe, that is going to progress. It will respond to whatever is the result of the vote of the citizens. But at the same time, I would say already in the Granada Declaration, there were some hints towards enlargement. I said it was a clear statement. What are we going to say? Something that is going to be completely different? I don't know. Citizens will say something completely different. I don't know either. So I'm not going to make the fortune teller. But what I can say is European Union has been, for a long period, has been more than half a century, and at the same time has its own sort of philosophy and a way to approach things. And well, there is Euroscepticism, well, had to be properly reflected in whatever decisions are to be taken by European institutions. But in the end, what we say, this is a long-term process, and we will see how it evolves in the coming years. Asking or wondering about how things may evolve, I think it's going maybe too far at the moment, really.
Thank you. What is the Madrid positions regarding the report of the Franco-German expert group on the EU reform, which proposes that the EU moves to qualified majority decision-making in preparation for a new enlargement?
Madrid position on this. Actually, I would go to what is more than Madrid, but actually where we are standing, and apologies for quoting once again Granada Declaration. It was one of the issues that is to be discussed in the coming months and years. Qualified majority in view of the coming enlargement. I can say something. Spain, quite before we are making this Granada Declaration, has been in favor of promoting some changes into decision making in the European Union. But it's quite before. I mean, we are already a large union with. I mean, it's quite difficult to get everything by consensus, and we have been supporting that already for a while. But we are speaking of something that has been on the table for quite a long time. The idea is, for example, in foreign policy, in some fields that there could be, we could begin here and there. And now, with the process of enlargement, is something that is an acute question that had to be taken on board. What would be the result? Well, you say, what is the position of Madrid? The position of Madrid is, we will come, at the moment, we will try to look for consensus. It's not just this report. It's something that dates back years ago. It's not the first time that within the EU there is discussion for changing decision-making system and all the like. And it's going now is related to enlargement, but it's been already an issue for years. And I can say what has been so far the position of Spain. Actually, we have been promoting it, and we began at the time. I'm not referring to this very precise project or report that put forward by these experts. It was a point made that there was a need to be considered. How? Well, more than one occasion. Let's have less commissioners. Let's do this in this way. Don't know. But it's indeed, I mean, it's something that it will come, and a really technical issue, highly political, but a technical issue. It is quite complex. Just consider, as I said, we have been considering this for foreign policy already for years, and without making any reference to this specific report.
Okay. Last year, Pedro Sanchez was the first Spanish Prime Minister to officially visit the country since the establishment of the bilateral relations. And this year, Mr. Alvarez was the first head of Spanish diplomacy who paid a visit to Skopje. How do you evaluate the new dynamics in the bilateral relations between the two countries, which will mark the 30th anniversary next year and are also NATO allied countries?
One would say that, well, we are now in the best of possible moments in our bilateral relationship. Well, actually, we should be much more ambitious. And the idea is that we can improve. We have managed, and I mean, these two visits for our Prime Minister and Minister Alvarez on a bilateral basis have indeed sort of is a step forward into an incremental process. Little by little, we are sort of getting at a level where we are having this sort of bilateral exchanges at high level. Actually, on more than one occasion, there have been visits on the bilateral format from the Prime Minister of North Macedonia or from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So it goes both ways. And indeed, that's one part of it. But in the end, bilateral relations are based on something more than institutional. Institutional is important, but it's not the only thing. And whenever our Prime Minister came and Minister Alvarez, the message is always the same. We have to build on that basis and build on improving our economic relationship, improving our cultural relationship, improving our people-to-people relationship. For example, I mean, it would be important to come back and have once again direct flights between North Macedonia and Spain. There used to be, we as embassy were working for that. I know it's important. it's a homework for myself, but I think is sort of the basis for this. 30th anniversary is indeed a good occasion just to take a stock of what we have got, but we have to be very, very ambitious, and we are working on that. And any ambassador would be happy to comment that in just a period of over 1 year, there was a visit by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And actually, it was not only that. We have Minister of Justice, Minister of Interior.
Yes.
So, I mean, it was for a multilateral issue, but also to the opportunity to have this exchange. It goes further than that. There was a visit also a long time ago by the Minister of Defense, and you also mentioned, now we are NATO allies. Actually, we have to improve, to enrich our relationship in security-related matters, and that's another of the issues. And well, for sure, I already mentioned economic should be one of our, and it is one of our priorities, I can say.
One of the best promoters of cultural cooperations are cultural centers. Spain has the Cervantes Institute. Can we expect the opening of a branch of this institute in North Macedonia soon, since there are such in several other Balkan countries?
Instituto Cervantes, or cultural centers, is one of the main instruments to improve cultural relations. It's not the only one. This decision implies not only funding, but also an administrative decision. It is complex, it's long, and I cannot foresee that it's going to take place in coming months or as easy as, let's say, 2024. It's quite complicated, I mean, and let's be much more practical. We are already working on some ideas concerning online courses of Spanish. Spanish, which is a language that is not only for Spain. I always keep on saying that is a language that is shared by, I don't know the number of 600 millions, something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, please.
It's a second world language.
Second, well, let's put it in those terms. And that's the important thing. I keep on saying, well, how important it is, not because it's a language, Castilian, Spanish, that is spoken in Spain, but because it is spoken in whole Latin America and is also growing in the United States. But what I was saying is that actually it's not only Instituto Cervantes. We have already a lecturer here at the university. We have had him already for years. We are improving the capacity of outreach of this lecturer, but also we are in other working in other areas. For example, I know that audiovisual field is quite important. In the old days, I've been told that there are plenty of citizens which I meet on a daily basis that they say, well, where did you learn that nice Spanish? And they say, well, I continue to see soap operas that were quite trendy some 10 and 15 years ago, and we do not longer have them. Even so, I've been told, for example, La Casa de Papel now is one of those top soap operas or series that is followed with most interest in North Macedonia and in the whole region. So let's think about other means, not only Instituto Cervantes. We are working on that. And I can say very proudly, for example, that last year we had in the National Library, we had the opportunity to have reading of some excerpts, some fragments of El Quijote, both in Spanish and in Macedonian. I don't know what we will be preparing for this year, but we are always thinking in new ideas because it goes beyond that. I know for sure Instituto Cervantes in Skopje would be most important. We will continue to work for that, but at the same time, I mean, on the near future, let's work on some other ideas that may be easier, and in the end, maybe as fruitful, or well, at least can play an important role in promotion of our culture, our language, and our values. By the way, shared values.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for this interview for me, and have happy holidays.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure, and well, all the best. And if for all those that may be watching or are to watch this, also my best wishes for this season holidays and for next year. All the best, and all the best for North Macedonia and for its citizens.
Thank you.